WEF, World Economic Forum, very famously says you will own nothing and be happy. But what if I told you that you can also be the WEF of your garden and say, soil, you will get nothing and you will be happy, because there is a possibility that you could do a true zero input garden, meaning no fertilizers, no pesticides, no nothing, with some small steps or nuances. If you don't know who I am, hi, hello, my name is Ashley. I have a bachelor's of science in soil science. I like to take said science and apply it to all things plants. And so therefore, this whole idea of zero input gardening, soil health, that sort of thing, is right up my alley. It's in my wheelhouse, if you will. Now, with that being said, what the heck does it mean to have a zero input garden? I think very obviously what this means is zero inputs means no fertilizer, no pesticides, no compost, and at times no irrigation, depending on how intense you decide to go with this. And what it's doing is it's challenging the narrative that plants need humans to exist. And I think we can obviously argue plants probably don't need humans to exist, considering there's forests and ecosystems all over the world. Most famously, one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on planet Earth being the rainforest, with zero to no human inputs at all. And when humans do put inputs in, we tend to kill it. So there's that. And therefore, we try to mimic that in our garden, whether that's for environmental climate action reasons, because we care about Mother Earth. Don't shoot the messenger. That's just the narrative. I'm not saying I do or do not believe that. This is a non-political channel, despite what I started the whole video off with. So, I mean, we're just off to a bad start here. I mean, I have red hair too. I like to troll people in my spare time. So anyways, I digress. So there's that side of it. But then there's also the side of, I mean, we kind of got a big old war going on right now. And, well, let's just say between BB and Trump, I don't think we're going to end up with fertilizer or seed or pesticide or anything here, probably for several years to come. So you probably want to look into zero inputs because it's valuable and useful to you. Now, what a realistic zero input garden will look like is recycling of nutrients within the system itself, obviously reducing losses of water. And then I think you could obviously argue the ability to seed save in that if you want to go to the real extreme of literal zero input in an entire enclosed ecosystem or micro ecosystem that is your yard. Now, there is some small nuance here when it comes to your garden versus an ecosystem or any system in which people are harvesting from it. There's a small difference. So a forest, for example, a forest is an ecosystem that has existed for decades, if not centuries. There is very little to no removal of food, maybe redistribution of nutrients, and therefore food within the system. There's not full-blown exporting of it. We also have massive amount of biodiversity. Now, our gardens are constantly being disturbed, whether that's us transplanting or sowing seeds. We also have continual removal for us to eat from, which is why we're growing the garden to begin with. Unless you're doing flower gardens only and you're not doing bouquets, and great, fine, then ignore that. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then at times we do have the whole idea of monocropping, which tends to be a practice that is held by some, but not held by others. So there's maybe some nuance there as well. So what's the elephant in the room here? I think the elephant in the room here is very obviously going to be nutrients. So how does an ecosystem get fertilizer without any fertilizer ever being added? Well, it doesn't have additions. What it does is it recycles nutrients. So for us to have a zero input garden, we need to mimic that in our garden. This is done through 4 very main tactics, actually, shockingly enough, not just one. So I think the first one is very obvious, which is the falling down of plant biomass. So leaves off of trees falling to the ground, then being decomposed by macro decomposers that then go to micro decomposers, and nutrient cycling, etc. So I think that's pretty obvious. And that's obviously what we're doing when we compost, for example, or if we do a chop and drop form of weeding, that would be our ecosystem version of that. What if I told you there are 3 other mechanisms that aren't as commonly thought of? For example, there is deep root infiltration or deep nutrient mining, if you will. So ecosystems that are successful will have things like trees, and these trees will have giant taproots that drill down and mine for nutrients. They're pulling these nutrients from these lower levels of the soil and pushing them up into the upper biomass, falls off, and then is distributed onto the ground. So not only are you recycling what was on the surface of the soil back into the ground, but you're also mining for what is below ground, very deep below ground, pulling that up and then also tossing that onto the ground, which will then be recycled and et cetera and so forth. Next up is mycorrhizal fungi. So mycorrhizal fungi, if you did not know, is ideally in a network and in an ecosystem. That's exactly what it is. Because remember that whole undisturbed part in the ecosystem for decades or centuries or millennia in some cases? That mycorrhizal fungi network actually doesn't just allow for nutrient solubilizing and then moving into the plants, but also allows for water to be uptaken and a number of other different signals to be tossed around between all the roots that make up the mycorrhizal fungi network. And so therefore it is something you can apply not so much in a disturbed bed, because again, this is an undisturbed ground that allows for this to happen, and therefore something that would work best in a perennial food forest, something permanent rather than something that is done annually. Now, I will kind of bite my tongue here a little bit because there is some new research coming out about how quickly mycorrhizal fungi networks can be established. And I am looking into that, and I'm going to make a video on it, which is going to backtrack literal years of what I've been telling you. So I'm about to eat crow, I think, based off of what I'm looking at, but we'll get into that nuance later, probably like few weeks down the road, because it's going to take me a little bit of time to read through a lot of journals because I don't trust AI to read them for me. So I need to physically read and highlight. And yeah, like I said, I think I'm going to eat crow just based off of the few that I have read. But with that being said, because I do put so much effort into these videos and I don't use AI, I'm not AI. Funnily enough, I know redheads, they are real. They are not a figment of your imagination. Hit that subscribe button, because that will hugely help the channel, and you also won't miss that video that I'm going to release in a few weeks' time about mycorrhizal fungi and whether or not you should use it in your garden. It is the free and it is the incredibly helpful thing to do when it comes to supporting a real human channel. So hit the subscribe button for me, but also hit the subscribe button for anyone you do enjoy that is a human, because AI sucks. And when they take over, they're probably going to take me out, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Any users. Now here's the big problem, the thing we cannot escape. And that is the whole idea that we are harvesting from the ground. So this harvesting process means that you have one option. And that one option is your human waste, urine and feces, needs to make its way back into the garden via compost, ideally. I actually have a whole video on urine and whether or not you should use it in the garden. And if you choose to use it, how to use it properly. I'll link it up here, hopefully, if I remember what I'm doing. I digress. That's the only way to do zero waste. Now, I personally, not into it. Not my thing. Everyone's got a fetish, and I'm not fetish shaming. That is not it for me. So a true zero input / closed system for me is not a reality by any stretch of the imagination. Next rock in our world is obviously going to be pests. So pest, if you did not know, in the world of agronomy, plant science, soil science, is not bugs only. Pest, when I say pest suppression, pest, if I say pest suppression, if I say pest suppression, I mean three or more, actually more. I mean all pests. I mean bacterial. I mean fungal. I mean creepy crawlies. I mean weeds. All of them are considered pests in the world of plant science speech, if you will. So pest control, all pest control, is something that needs to be managed with zero input if you're truly going to do a zero input garden. So number one, and probably one that I live by and I very often encourage on this channel, because I don't know if you knew this, but insecticides, if there's anything to be scared of when it comes to pesticides, it's insecticides. They are a neurotoxin. And I used to actually do research in the world of pesticides, specifically insecticides, for midge, aphids, and Bertha armyworms specifically. And my NDA has ran out. It was for a big company that may or may not start with a BAYER that also bought Monsanto. So it's kind of like a conglomerate now. Insecticides are scary. I'll just say that. Don't use them at all, ever, in any capacity. Don't eat anything that's had an on them either. Anyway, I digress. Great way to take care of these is predator-prey dynamics. So this is what ecosystems use, and it is incredibly effective. So pests can be taken out by diatomaceous earth that is quite literally continually reapplied. Whoopie ding, who wants to do that? Not me, not my thing. There are other ways to get rid of it. For example, there is something called Bobex, which is very, very smelly stuff. It is fermented garlic, cayenne pepper, onion, you name it, anything raunchy has been fermented into this brew that you will never, in any capacity, want to open up in your home. And you sure as heck do not want to ever use like near a sitting area, because you will regret that horribly. But it does work very effectively for rabbits, deer. I find it works for aphids, flea beetles, that sort of thing as well. But if you didn't want to go that route, predator-prey dynamics is the way to go. So you can get a number of different ones. You can get praying mantises. You can get ladybugs. You can purchase these, physically purchase these. You can get predatory mites. There is grub grenade here in Canada. I don't think they're able to ship to the US, but they are very infamously well known for giving predatory mites. I use them in the house all the time. You can't even see them. I use them in the garden all the time. They work fantastically. We also have nematodes. So nematodes will take out slugs, snails, ants, thrips, flea beetles, mealybugs, you name it. So there's a number of different predatory prey dynamic things that you can add to your system. Very easy to do, like I said. And shockingly enough, you're probably thinking, yeah, I'm going to put a ladybug in my yard. It's going to fly off. These things are small. In your garden, if you make it a little oasis, I can promise you, Mrs. Ladybug is not going to want to fly to your next door neighbors, which is grass. They are going to hang out in your yard, particularly if the food source is there. If they move on, that's a good thing. That means the food source is no longer in its area. So don't knock it until you try it. That is probably the best way to take care of creepy crawlies, for lack of a better term. For things like bacterial and fungal disease suppression, we're looking at more so biodiversity over any sort of sprays or additives. Now, there is sulfur, elemental sulfur, completely organic, and is something that I do use. You can use a fogger form of this, or you can use like a powder form of these. Both of these work fantastically, specifically for fungal problems. There also is the use of, for example, milk. Expired milk that you have will take out powdery mildew, and it is incredibly effective. These are things you can do, but ideally, the best preventative measure is biodiversity. Now, I know there is a whole world, soil food web world. Eileen Ingham, who's much smarter than me, obviously. I mean, she's got a PhD, so all hail her. But what I will say, working in the world of food production on a major scale for my damn near whole life, small nuance there is that yes, if you monocrop, you build up bacteria and fungal and all that sort of stuff that benefits the plant, obviously, because the food source is there. The host plant, if you will, is there. So you're going to build it up over time. But you're also going to build up the bad guys because the food source is there and the host is there. So it's kind of one of those double-edged swords, which I commonly find to be a theme here in the world of organic, which makes you think that the answer is somewhere in the middle between completely conventional and completely organic, but I digress. Biodiversity is very important. If you've seen my gardens in the past, and things actually warm up and I'm not freezing my butt off, you know this for a fact. I have practiced this for years and years, and I think it's hugely important for that disease suppression. For weed suppression, you don't have a lot of options here. You obviously have solarization, which is also a great method for any sort of pest suppression, disease, fungal, bacterial, or crawlies. But your main prevention is actually always going to be physical removal of those weeds. I will put a small little another nudge for hitting that subscribe button. Both organic and synthetic forms of this can and will kill off or suppress germination and success of your other plants that you need and want to grow. So other than mulch, which I find is very useful, mechanical removal is going to be your best bet. But because we're doing a closed system, you're going to want to take said weeds and you're going to want to compost them. Or you want to chop them and drop them because you don't want to remove them from the system because they've actually also already removed nutrients, which means you need to stay on top of them and not allow them to flower and set seed. Even once it does that, you really got to make sure hot compost is 10 out of 10 because if it's not, you're going to regret that choice. So with all that being said, what are the 3 true Googleable? What's the verb for Googling? Oh, it's Googling. Is that a verb? I guess. I mean, who cares? Gen Z doesn't even know English at this point, so does it really matter? Probably not. A term, a word you can Google. Then what you want to do is you actually want to look up these 3. So wild system gardening is kind of the first term. And this is the term that references a true kind of zero input system. This is very specifically only aligned with perennial gardens and food forests, and more specifically, perennials and food forests with minimal to no harvest. So good luck. Have fun with that. Kind of useless, in my opinion. Next up is what we call closed loop gardening, which is you compost everything. You compost the weeds, you compost the mulch, you compost the plants, you compost the waste that comes out of your butthole, all of it. All of it gets composted. All of it gets put back into the garden. That is a closed loop. Now, if you have a dinner party, have fun with that. Make sure they're a part of your fetish group. Because if not, you gotta have some issues. And then there's kind of that really Puritan version of it, which is a zero input garden, which means no compost inputs, no compost imports. Or the looser version of this is very simply going to be composting what you can, minus the icky parts, in my opinion, and then importing compost as needed, but making sure the compost you're importing is local, from a local area, and isn't from, a bag or from far away. I'm sure many of you have local composting facilities. That would be what you'd want to use in this scenario. Now, if you want to see my most recent video, you're going to want to click here, and that is what Google says you should watch next because they're watching you. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.